Now we're on. Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitchen.
So today, since we had the eclipse yesterday, I thought we would pull the piece from Sukkah 29a, Daf 29a, about the eclipse. So then we'll go back to Shekalim, which is the temple tax. It's in the order of Moed, which is appointed times. And if we finish, because the piece that we're doing on Shekalim is pretty short, we may get to festival laws and tractate Beitza, Shammai, and Hillel. If you recall, this is Zugot. Shammai we remember as who?
The loser.
Often the loser, and also
He was a little more hard-nosed.
less lenient, so more restrictive. And Hillel,
He was more accepting and gracious.
I would say that his halakhic rulings were tended to be more lenient. So more restrictive, more lenient. Hillel often did win. So we're going to deal first with Sukkah 29a. We've got a handout for the piece. So the bracha, when one sees something phenomenal, is the same beginning as all the brachot. And then this is the one for see great works, who creates the works of creation. So that would be the one for seeing an eclipse, and since it's like a once in a whatever 28,000 years, probably Shehafianu after that.
There's another one, June 5th, you know.
Okay.
That's
so
Venus. It's a Venus transit.
Right, but did you say your glasses?
So there you go.
You're not. It's
Okay.
going to be very hard to see because it's a spot.
Okay.
But still, it
So-
might be fun.
Could be fun. And interestingly enough, I remember studying this, so there must have been one when I was in rabbinic school at some point. So anyway, if you could pick up the first paragraph.
Our rabbis taught when the sun is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for the whole world. This may be illustrated by a parable. To what can this be compared? To a human being who made a banquet for his servants and put up for them a lamp. When he became angry with them, he said to his servant, take away the lamp from them and let them sit in the dark.
Okay, so they're saying it's a bad omen, and this goes on. This follows the theme of when there's rain, maybe it's a good, maybe it's a bad omen, depending on what kind of rain it is. So that is what preceded this piece in Sukkah. And yes, lots of bonuses. Is that?
Well, yeah, because they really didn't know what was causing. You know, they weren't quite sure why it was moving there. It was just a natural thing that occurs in the way the world was, the universe was put together.
I mean, the learned people of Torah knew, because they even had the word eclipse. I mean, they knew that. I mean, precisely.
Well, yes, it's an eclipse.
However, the problem was that not all the people were learned people, and so maybe the pagans around them, or the peasants around them, even the non-religious peasants around them, would say, "Wow, this is bad. You know, our gods are doing something weird and moving the sun around or blotting the sun out. So maybe it's time to go. You know." To go
Pray, sacrifice, do something.
Do
What
something.
should we do as a result of this particular situation?
Sometimes the thing they decided to do was to, let's go attack the Jews. They're too calm about this, so it must be something.
Okay,
So in general, the wise men in the Talmud says, well, you know, whenever something unusual happens like this,
it's a bad
thing for the Jewish people.
And continuing on with that theme, you want to do the next paragraph there?
It was taught, Rabbi Meir said, whenever luminaries are in eclipse, it is a bad omen for Israel 23, since they are used to blows.
Okay.
I said, for
Okay,
Israel, since they are used to blows.
Right, so those are our footnotes,
Yeah,
23 and 24. What it actually says in the text is enemies of Israel. It's a bad omen for, quote, enemies of Israel. And when this is translated itself, what they're really meaning, instead of meaning the enemies, it actually means Israel. So that's why Sonsino is picking it up and saying it's a bad omen for Israel, although the literal text is the enemies of Israel. It's kind of the same thing when we see sometimes in even Torah, they call it a blessing, but what they're really meaning is a curse. So, and we find that more in Kentucky. Because they don't want to like, whatever. They want to like move it and not speak about it directly in this kind of fashion.
This may be compared to a school teacher who comes to school with a strap in his hand. Who becomes apprehensive? The one accustomed to daily punishment.
Okay, and just pick up the 24 on the footnote there.
More than any other people, if any evil is to befall the world, Israel may be sure to have the lion's share, if not all of it.
Okay, so that's our Sonsino opinion with regard to what happens and when it's bad. Alan, you want to pick up next?
Our rabbis taught when the sun is in eclipse, it's a bad omen for idolaters. When the moon is in eclipse, it's a bad omen for Israel, since Israel reckons by the moon and idolaters by the sun.
And that what they're talking about is actually the way that we do our calendar.
Which it just happened to be the new moon.
If it is an eclipse in the east, it's a bad omen for those who dwell in the east. If it's in the west, it's a bad omen for those who dwell in the west. If in the midst of the heaven, I guess I mean in the middle of the sky.
Yeah, in the middle of the sky, right?
It's a bad omen for the whole world. If its face is red as blood, it's a sign that the sword is coming. If it is like sackcloth, the arrows of famine are coming. If it resembles both, swords and arrows of famine are coming to the world.
And the footnote on 28 says what they're saying with this sackcloth, meaning that it's dark and overcast.
So it's a good thing that the wind-up mechanism worked good to keep everything.
Everything was kept going.
If the eclipse is at sunset, calamity will tarry in its coming. If at dawn, it hastens on its way. But some say that the order is to be reversed, that there is no nation which is smitten, that its gods are not smitten together with it, as is said. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. But when Israel fulfills the will of the omnipresent, they need to have no fear of all these omens, as is said. Thus says the Lord, learn not the way of the nations and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the nations are dismayed in them. The idolaters will be dismayed, but Israel will not be dismayed.
Okay, so the upshot of all of this is that as long as we follow the will of God, we don't have to worry about these omens.
And can we go back to the thing right here? It's a bad omen for Israel. And it doesn't mean that enemies of Israel?
The euphemism is the original enemies of Israel in the original is used for,
Like sarcasm or?
like they didn't want to say it directly. They didn't want to say that it was directly bad for Israel. So they put it off on the enemies of Israel. But what they meant was Israel. And when Sonsino translated it, we don't have that kind of circular language for the most part these days. People just kind of say what they mean, right? They don't like hold back. They don't guard their tongue. They have no clue as what comes out of their mouth often. We just kind of say it, especially in America. We don't have very good filters. When we say stuff, often sometimes we're just not kind. I mean, in this kind of a setting, there's the rabbis were very conscious of how, not only how, but what they spoke. So they wouldn't have said it's a bad omen for Israel. They would say it's bad for the enemies of Israel. Because they didn't want to say it directly.
We still argue every day of what a document called the Constitution of the United States means. In parts of it, it's argued every day in court. And it's a much newer document. So how, when you say Sonsino translated, this way, what's my guarantee that that's the right correct translation? Because we're still trying to, documents that are closer to us, that were written where we had more understanding maybe of the document than what this is, then how can we be sure that that's correct?
Well, that argument can be said against this entire book.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, all the Talmud translations.
Right.
It has more to do with our Masorah, our tradition. So this is what our sages have said for hundreds of years. Sonsino's writing it down. They're not inventing it. So you can choose to not accept it. I mean, that's certainly a choice.
Just a guideline.
There's some of that. Okay, do you want to pick up Diane?
Our rabbis taught on account of four things is the sun in eclipse. On account of a Beth Din who died and was not mourned.
Okay, so someone who was perhaps an important person, for example, they're giving us the footnote, the vice president of the Sanhedrin, and somebody didn't do a proper chesed, a proper memorial address. Okay, so maybe that.
Fittingly on account of a betrothed maiden who cried out aloud in the city, and there was none to save her. On
Okay.
account of sodomy.
In that situation, they were talking about a maiden who was raped within the city limits, so this is another reason for an eclipse.
On account of two brothers whose blood was shed at the same time.
So these are the four reasons that the rabbis are saying cause an eclipse. So that this is their theory on why an eclipse occurs.
Interesting.
Wow. I
Dude.
actually thought that they knew the scientific reason then, because
I would say that they probably knew, yes, that's true. But there's also the piece that comes in is that there are always reasons in addition to the scientific reason. So even though, yes, they would have understood, you know, generally speaking, how it occurred, moon passing in front of sun, occurring on a regular basis, they interpolated the year, they were very astute into how often and how many times and how to get calendar interpretation was a huge job of theirs.
right. I mean, it's weird. By the 12th century, everyone had forgotten, but in the first century, you know, the second century, when Talmud was written, you know, the library the libraries in Egypt and so forth, people had written books on how astronomy worked and how.
And there's no question about that, but this is the same issue as, depends upon what your viewpoint is, when there's a lot of calamities that occur in one's life, one's supposed to, what? Check the mezuzahs, right?
Right.
So even though we know that terrorists board buses sometimes in certain places, and it's the terrorists that cause it, there's also this additional thread that comes from Bubba Mises or whatever other theory you want to look at as to, you know, people would like to be able to control their universes, if at all possible. And saying, oh, it's because, you know, somebody wasn't born properly, or there was a maiden who had trouble and nobody saved her. They would overlap in terms of rationale, or it'd be a different layer.
Was it a rationale, or was it to get people to do better?
Do better?
Yes.
Was it some kind of stick or prod to get people to make sure they were properly mourning someone?
Or was it to put it in a way that they could understand in the here and now in the physical?
All of these are good questions. Do we still have people who are going to change out their mezuzahs if there's some problem? Sure.
Why would you ever do that?
Well, you do it every
I'll
3
call you
years
back.
according to some
You
tradition.
check every 3 years.
For the insides.
Well, yeah,
In
for
general.
the cloth, exactly.
Right, you tell me that.
For the scroll.
For the
Yeah.
scroll, right.
Yeah, not the case.
No, but I don't have to change the case, do I?
No.
I just have to check to make sure that my prayer thing inside is in good shape and doesn't need to be replaced.
Right. But some people have a practice.
Alan, would you pass me an egg and the
Bubba
salt
Mice.
and pepper?
I'm sharing Bubba Mices today, that's all, because
Okay,
that's where we're at, so,
Can I get the
Yeah.
because I
paper?
just checked on mine when I put them up.
okay.
It's not supposed to be turned your dust, it's not supposed to have little spider footprints across it from itsy bitsy spiders,
All of
you
that.
know, that good stuff.
Okay, so, there was one more sentence there.
Due to four things are the luminaries in eclipse, those do forgeries who give false witness, those who rear small cattle in the land of Israel, and those who cut down good trees.
Okay, so here's another
Rear small
round of
cattle.
four things that cause just generally eclipses.
So you shouldn't have miniature cattle in Israel.
But the problem, actually, if you look at the footnote, is based upon Baba Kama's daf, which says that those animals are not grazing on property that's owned by the owners. So the people are often grazing their cattle on other people's, and in a sense, are robbing. So this would be an issue of robbery. So four things are the luminaries in eclipse, those who do forgeries, give false witness, people who lie, people who cut down good trees, and it says even if they are their own. Okay, so These are all issues that our sages have said 1,500 years ago, causing eclipses. So that I wanted to share with you today, since we just had our,
Did you have the glasses and everything and see it?
we have the welding shield.
Ah,
And you had to share it.
Should have been number 12 was better.
yeah, 15 is what I heard.
2017 is supposed to be an absolute, complete, larger eclipse.
Wow. So now we've studied our Talmud, maybe we'll revisit it again in 5 years. Oh, something I thought that you might enjoy, this is Rabbi Mary's installation at North Tahoe. Just thought I
What day is that?
would share that information. You can look up the piece there. Okay, so we're in Shekalim. Page 189 at the bottom, and I think we're on to Talmudic. So we're going to learn a little bit more about the inner workings of the temple. Remember, we're in the section about temple tax, and under chapter 5, we're going to learn who the temple officials were.
These were the temple officials. Yohanan ben Phineas was in charge of tokens.
Ahia.
And
And also, please know that Ahia was not only here in the, whatever it was, 2nd century or 1st century, I should say. He was also the Baal Shem Tov's mentor.
Wow,
Yes.
there's a big time difference between.
There would be, yeah, close to, what, 1,700 years or something like that. But I just thought I'd share that with you.
Wow. What I find even more interesting than that is the fact that he was able to study him to be his mentor, and that many years difference that in that time that there was that much stuff that could be passed to the Baal Shem Tov.
Amazing.
Well, this doesn't say how much.
I just find it really, really exciting, you know.
Okay.
I think Mattathias ben Samuel of casting lots. There's another one of birds.
Petachia.
Yeah, birds. Petachia was actually Mordecai, but Petachia because he opened the discourse with the words and was fluent in 70 languages. And it's very interesting because when it mentions birds, because Israel is such a great flyway, it's a major migration route. That how many 15,000 species of birds come through Israel?
What's a papa?
Petach is so, Petach etzadelet. Open the door.
Let's see, Ben
Ahia was
in charge of those were stomach ailments.
Who knew?
Okay, Nehunya, digging wells. Gavini, the crier. Ben Gavini was in charge of closing the gates. Ben Bahi of the strap. Ben Arsa of the symbols.
Mogros the Rabbi.
Music. Garmud family of showbread.
Showbread. Tinosis.
Yeah. Family of preparing incense and pellets.
And there actually is a long-standing tradition of that one family that took charge of the incense. So I don't know how many generations they could track, but it was a very special work that they did.
Elazar of the curtain and Phineas of the investments.
Okay, so
Now,
we
is
have
this
the
a
names of the temple officials here. Sorry.
Now, where it mentions Phineas twice, is that the same Phineas or is it different?
We have the first one, Yochanan ben Phineas.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so that was the son and the father.
perhaps Phineas of the vestments. Perhaps. I don't know the answer to that for sure. With regard to preparing the incense, believe in this, there were 13 types of incense that went into creating the incense. And in specific, there was one that it smelled awful. I think it was called galbanum. So when they created the incense, we always remember that it takes all these wonderful and sweet smells and also some that are not quite so sweet to create that which was holy and sacred.
And
for the temple
what did we
service.
say galbanon was? We had actually gone through this. I was thinking it was frankincense, but that's
No.
old. That begins with an
actually,
O.
frankincense smells great.
Yeah.
So if you want to
That's
look it up,
Olamon?
you could probably find it.
I
on
think
your
we
iPhone.
looked this up before.
Okay, so
Thank goodness
I'll look
for
it up
that.
again.
okay, number 2
How
there.
did you use them to get by without iPhones?
I know, really. There's just so many cool things to look up.
There were never less than 3 assistant treasurers and 7 principal treasurers. No public financial office should be discharged by fewer than 2 officials.
Okay, so just that little piece, that little clip there, has become not only perhaps practically halakha for anyone who's dealing with temple funds, that there's not a single signature or a single person who's involved with it.
Ben, and how did you pronounce that name?
And yeah.
Yeah. I was entrusted with the responsibility for those with stomach ailments, and Eleazar with the responsibility for the curtain, as the majority of the public had consented.
So generally, you need 2, but these 2 particular guys apparently were so trustworthy that the public consented to allow them to deal with the temple.
So frankincense is albanum, and galbanum is ferula gamanosa,
Okay.
and they're not giving me a common name. Terpenes, I think the terpenes are related to like turpentine type.
Something that doesn't smell so good.
Musky odor, an intense green scent.
Okay, now.
Okay, we're on
Okay,
page
now-
190, number 6.
Now, when you talk about, these people weren't appointed by these were voted, elected, appointed.
Well, this particular issue, my guess is, because it says the majority of the public consented to these 2 people doing something that was not the normal practice, which was to have 2 people there all the time dealing with temple tax funds. So those 2, otherwise often yichus or their lineage was what put them into
Right.
the particular official section. So Ben Levy, they were involved in the use of the Levites.
So the Kohen Gadol didn't appoint anybody belonging to specific jobs?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that different groups had different responsibilities. If someone actually appointed, I've never read that, but
I-
don't know. It's possible.
There were 2 chambers in the temple. One called the quiet chamber and the other called the chamber of vessels. God-fearing people would place money securely in the quiet. Secretly, thank you. In the quiet chamber, and poor relatives of people of good class,
Or of good deeds.
okay, would discreetly support themselves from it. If anyone had a vessel, would throw it into the chamber of the vessels, and once every 30 days, the treasurer would open it up. If they found anything of use for the temple, they would retain it. They would sell the rest and add the proceeds to the temple maintenance fund.
What's
Okay.
a vessel?
Vessel is chamber of vessels. It would seem to
A
be
holder.
The entire room?
it would seem, although, that there was a place where people could deposit, and there's Hasidic stories that come down about this. So there's a place where people could go in and deposit, other people would go in and take. So those who needed would take, those who had the money would deposit and leave it. So, but yet, this was a space where every 30 days they were gonna clean it out and use it for the temple tax, and it would go towards the temple. But in the meantime, if somebody needed it, they would go in and support themselves from it. So, chapter 6.
There were 13 horn-shaped receptacles, 13 money-changing counters, 13 places to bow in the sanctuary. The families of Rabban,
Gamliel,
and Rabbi Hanna,
Hanina.
the deputy high priest, used to bow in 14 places.
So they were like being a little more, machmir, a little more stringent. And this is the reason.
The extra one being near the wood stove, stores. They had a tradition that the ark was concealed.
Yeah, so what they thought was, at least in these two families, Rabbi Gamliel's and Rabbi Hanina's, that they knew where the ark had actually been stored. And we know because of this story in number 2.
The priest was once busy in the area and noticed that the floor was different from the adjoining area. He went to tell his friend, but fell down dead before he managed to complete this statement. Then they were sure that there was where the ark was concealed.
Okay, so this is how they figured out that the ark had once been there. So
It had once been there, but where was it?
once been there. Well, at this point, it had already been carried off.
So
So
carried out by the
Philistines, was it?
Ethiopians, yeah.
A lot of,
Different theories depending on
a lot of arguments on where it went.
Where did it go? So chapter 7.
Rabbi Simeon said the court instituted 7 measures regarding temple expenditure. One was that when a non-Jew sent an animal from abroad for a burnt offering, if he sent libations with it, they would be offered. But if not, libations would be provided at the public expense. Similarly, if a proselyte, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Died and left animals for sacrifice, if he left libations for them, they would be offered. But if not, libations would be provided at the public expense. The court also ruled that if a high priest died, his grain offering should be provided at the public expense. Rabbi Judah says it must be paid for by his heirs. Both agree that it must be a full tenth of an ephah. Do I want to read 7?
Yeah, go ahead.
7. They also decreed that priests might benefit from the wood, that the ashes of the red heifer were not subject to the law of sacrilege, and that bird pairs that had been rejected would be replaced at public expense. Rabbi Yosef said whoever provided the birds must replace the rejected ones.
Okay, so if there was something that ultimately became disqualified, who pays for it? Somebody says, I'm bringing this or consecrating this, and then they leave, maybe before the sacrifice takes place, and then someone actually looks at it, the priest is not going to do it. Wait, these are not, they're trade for whatever reason. Who's going to replace those? So,
Public expense.
public expense for some, or at least according to Rabbi Yossi, whoever provided those birds have to replace.
Yossi? Oh, I pronounced it wrong, huh? I did it A like mine. I gave it the French one. Okay.
Go say.
Chapter 8 covers the purity status of saliva or vessels found in Jerusalem, methods of cleaning appurtenances such as the sanctuary curtain and disposal to the remains of the offerings. Here is the final Mishnah.
Okay, so interestingly enough, you have to think about the bones weren't being consumed. They've got to go somewhere when they were offering these sacrifices. What did they do?
The limbs of the daily offerings are placed for disposal on the lower half of the altar ramp on the east side. Limbs of the additional offerings are placed for disposal on the lower half of the altar ramp on the west side. Those of the new moon offerings are placed for disposal before the altar. Shekel and first fruits operate only when the temple is standing, but the tithes of grain and cattle and the law of the firstborn animals apply irrespective to whether the temple is standing. If someone declares shekel and first fruits consecrated, despite there being no temple, they attain consecrated status. Rabbi Simeon says, if someone nowadays declares first fruits consecrated, they are not consecrated.
Okay.
What does that mean?
I have no idea what we just
So,
said.
so here's the issue with regard to first fruits and Shekalim. When we read before, when something becomes consecrated, then it's off limits to the individual. So if it's a goat, the goat becomes consecrated, you can't take the goat back home. In these days, so they're dealing with a situation that the temple's already gone, what are they gonna do about it? But people are used to bringing these things, right? Supporting the Levites, supporting the Kohanim. What are you gonna do? The temple's gone. So if someone says, I'm consecrating these first fruits, according to at least one, Rabbi Shimon, he says they're not consecrated. Even if you say these are consecrated, they're not going to be consecrated because we have no way of dealing with them. There's no temple, you can't deal with them under those circumstances.
Well, that's interesting. So they make all these rules like on the previous Mishnah that I read, but this was all written post, destruction of the temple.
This piece I would assume must be. Now it's hard to know. I mean, you don't really know in the thread what was pre, what was post. But pre, they would never have thought about the fact that what are we going to do if we get this stuff if there's no temple? Because it would never have crossed their mind that that could happen. It would never. It wasn't on the event horizon, right? No one would have ever thought that that would have occurred. But then it did occur, so now they have to deal with this situation. Somebody's consecrating stuff. Where do you send it? What do you do with it? You can't take it back. How do you distribute it? What do you do with it? So that's my assumption as to why it's written. Yeah, post-70.
I get extremely confused.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
the question?
Okay. If, if sometimes you read about, if you don't do this, this can happen. And so on and so forth. But then, why was the temple allowed to be destroyed? I mean, if you go in and...
We have plenty of midrash on that,
Well,
so...
Okay, I mean, there's lots of, but the simple things. Whoever touches the Ark of the Covenant was gonna die. So somehow all these people had to carry it without dying. And I had poles that went to it where they, and maybe not directly, but I'm sure there was times that they were on rough terrain that would tip one way or the other and some would ran.
Well,
To keep
we
it
did
from
have
breaking.
that story from Torah, which said that that was problematic, yes.
Yes, okay.
I died from trying to help make sure it didn't fall over.
Okay.
Right.
So, how could someone have taken it away and destroyed it and not be dead?
There's all that good question.
Well, the Ark was eventually found again, 1983.
And it's in the
Raiders
government
of the
Area
Lost Ark.
51?
Yeah.
I see.
You're joking, right?
Did you see Raiders of the Lost Ark?
You notice he looked at
Believe
you
in
very,
what you were saying, and then I realized, well, it's kind of funny.
he did that whole story and never changed the expression on his face while he was looking at it.
That's Alan.
Yes, he
I
was
think
good
that's
at it.
probably,
And there's also stories that there was a replica Ark made by the, when we went to Africa, by
The Jews that are from,
Ethiopia.
the Ethiopians.
Ethiopia.
The Ethiopians made a replica Ark, and it's still down there in Ethiopia.
Locked up in this building, they won't let anybody in.
there's stories that the Holy Grail's there too, in Ethiopia.
okay,
Don't believe any of it because it would be a pure, poor country. They would allow people to come in and take a look at it. Just the tourist dollars alone.
Well, then you could get into Hitler and his adventures into trying to recover all of the relics.
So you asked about how, how can even the temple be destroyed? But at least Josephus writes in quite a bit of detail about exactly how they engineered the destruction of the temple, exactly what they did to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of interesting. But it goes into all that detail in kind of a non-emotional way. It just reads like, okay, this is what we did. We made these big fires and whatever.
Well, you also have to look at the fact that, you know, how many times has Josephus' writings been edited? And maybe the redactors of what he wrote wanted to give him that type of appearance.
Okay, so should we move on to Beitza? We're on page 227. Who's up?
I think I am.
Page 227.
Because we had actually finished Noma before because we did that.
Oh, egg. Perfect. Just had an egg.
Did you
I was
on
wondering
it
why it's
before?
called egg,
I don't remember we did doing that. I have no more code yet.
I have it dog-eared, so we have done it before.
We're on 227.
Okay. The common name is its opening word, Beitza. It also is known as Yom Tov, since it defines the types of activity permitted or forbidden for festivals. The definition relates to the Sabbath laws. What is forbidden on Sabbaths is also forbidden on festivals. With the exception of carrying, lighting fires, and the preparation of food.
Okay, so catch those three,
Okay.
right? So
Forbidden,
right.
exceptions
What
of-
is, generally speaking, what's forbidden on Shabbat is going to be forbidden on the festivals, except one can carry, one can light fires,
Fires and the preparation of
prepare food.
Okay,
so those three areas.
they're pretty big. Lighting fires, food preparation. The circumstances in which these activities are permitted and of what constitutes food preparation are clarified. The tractate opens with an apparently trivial question. May one eat on the festival an egg laid by a hen that day? The school of Shammai, usually stricter, take the more lenient view in this instance. No one, however, seems to know quite what the original egg problem was about. Several Amoraic interpretations are investigated, and ultimately Rabbas prevails. Mishnah is concerned that if a festival falls on a Sunday, the egg will have been prepared, if only by heaven, on the Sabbath.
Okay, so catch that. So what's going on?
The hen's getting ready to lay an egg.
And she's like getting ready, but she hasn't.
Right.
But it's getting ready on Shabbos.
Right.
That's
So like she's in a
apparently
holding pattern?
Yes, that's it. Right.
She's not working until right after Shabbos?
Yeah.
Then produces the egg, so that makes it like a holy egg?
Well, that's the question. Can you eat it or not?
Well,
Since it is not permissible to prepare on the Sabbath for the festival, the egg may not be eaten. The egg quickly becomes a test case for a much more significant issue, fixing the calendar. Why in that diaspora is each festival day observed twice on succeeding days? Originally, diaspora Jews depended on receiving information from Jerusalem as to which day had been proclaimed the first of the month.
So you remember the old stories about how when you know that it's the new moon, because there were fires lit on the top of the mountains so they could communicate the correct date.
Okay.
But in the diaspora, it wasn't possible because they were too far away and there weren't enough mountains between hither and yon.
heaven forbid lightning should strike and start a fire.
There you go. Actually, it was enemies who had started on the wrong day to create havoc. So then they had to actually fix the calendar.
Oh. The festivals of Passover and Tabernacles begin on the 15th of the month. If messengers from Jerusalem did not arrive in time, there would be doubt as to which was the correct day to observe the festival. Was this doubling necessary if the correct date would be calculated? What would happen when temple was rebuilt and, as was anticipated, Jews reverted to fixing the calendar by observation and dispatching messengers from Jerusalem with the information? Underlying the discussion was a struggle to uphold the primacy of the courts of the land of Israel in calendar fixation. The current system of calculation was finalized early in the 10th century. That the doubled festival day was not then declared obsolete is due to the conservative stance of Geonim, including Saadia and Hai.
Okay. All right. So Mishnah.
This is amazing. So I learned something huge.
Which piece?
Going back at the top, that we're generally allowed to light fires and prepare food on the Hagim. I didn't know.
Well, the
As long as
issue
it's
is
not on
when
Shabbos.
when you're warming up to Shabbat, you can cook if it's for that day, but you can't cook for the next. I mean, but there's also, remember, Talmud isn't the halakhic guide. It's the guide to the various strains of thought. And it's not until Shulchan Aruch that we actually get a hard and fast, here's what and what not. So, but meal preparation generally, because you want the festival to be festive.
Right, so you have to serve festival meal.
Okay, if you can't light a fire on Shabbat, which we normally don't do, right?
Right?
Then how do you light the Havdalah?
So
Well, obviously you're ending Shabbat, which is the whole,
No, but
That's the whole point, right?
But
Is
the,
it?
the real complexity is, I thought it was a big problem having Passover start Saturday night.
right, because you can't cook on Shabbos regardless.
Right.
That's the problem with doing Pesach Saturday night.
But that's because we'd be
If
cooking Saturday night.
Pesach, if you were gonna cook a meal for Sunday night, it wouldn't be a problem, even if there was a Chag. You couldn't cook on Saturday for Sunday. But you could cook on,
Wait, we just said that didn't come out right, did it?
yeah,
It
All
didn't.
right.
I missed it. So you could cook for Sunday dinner.
on Sunday, even if it was a holiday. But it's for the day. You can cook for the day itself, but you can't cook for Monday.
That's
You
part of the
can't cook on
Hagim,
Saturday.
that's part of a Hagim halakha, that you
Right.
can cook for the day. So these are the 3 things you can do on a Yom Tov, but you can't prepare for following days.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, now I'm getting it.
So you can
There
cook,
is
you can cook
probably
you can
customs
cook, but you
within
can't cook for the
various
week or.
strains of Judaism, which are gonna say no. I can just, predict that that's gonna, somewhere be the halakha that says, not on Yom Tov.
And
Well, my family has a big custom of leftovers, so we always overcook on Passover. And when we're preparing for the second Seder, then we would overcook on that hog.
For the next day.
For the whole week. Yeah.
Oh, well, I see, okay,
So
however it
therefore,
goes.
so that's against Hanukkah.
Well,
technically.
Well, but I've seen a lot of people who just tend to overcook because that's their normal practice, not because they're doing it on purpose. So it has to do with the
Oh,
Intent?
yeah, intention.
intention. Right.
Interesting.
Okay, so Mike, I think we're on the mission.
I usually plan to overcook because then that's my meal planning for the week.
if an egg was laid on festival day, the school, we just read that.
This is actually the actual mission. We
Okay.
read the about and
All right.
warm up,
If
but
the
we
egg-
didn't actually read it.
Thank you. If the egg was laid on festival day, the school of Shammai said it may be eaten. But the school of Hillel says it may not be eaten. The school of Shammai says the measure for getting rid of sourdough before Passover is date size, and for getting rid of leaven and olive size. The school of Hillel says both are an olive size.
Which is interesting here because Hillel in both cases is being more restrictive. Normally we think of Hillel as just the opposite, being more lenient, but with regard to these thoughts or halachot, they're more restrictive.
Just one a few times. If someone slaughters a wild animal or a fowl on the festival, the school of Shammai says he may dig with his spade to cover the blood.
Because this is a commandment, when something is slaughtered, that the blood get covered.
The school of Hillel says he may not slaughter unless the earth is ready for the festival. They agree that if he nevertheless slaughters, he should dig with the spade to cover the blood, that the ashes in the oven fire are regarded as prepared.
Okay, so there's a lot of halachot that say, lahatchil, or in the beginning, you can't, X. The diavad, but if you did it anyway, okay, we'll let you. So this is one of those situations. So Hillel is saying, if you don't slaughter, but if you did, you're supposed to have earth ready. So you cover the blood, right?
Yeah.
But even if you didn't do either that, the diavad, after the fact, you can cover it. Don't, but if you did, here's what you do. Yeah. Do you want to pick up the Gemara?
It was Todd, Rav said, if an egg was laid on the day first of the double festival day, and the para,
Diaspora.
It is permitted to eat it on the second day, but
Asi.
Asi said, if it is laid on the first day, it is forbidden to eat it on the other.
Okay, so here we're gonna have now discussions. Before, we had Shammai and Hillel who were saying yes and no. Now we've got more, what about when you have 2 festival days in a row?
Well, doesn't that go back to you can't cook for tomorrow?
Right, but we might know that now, but they didn't at the time. That's why this is the beginning of the thought process. Can you or can't you, and what should you do?
Could this be because Rabbi Asa regarded the 2 days one holiness
As one holiness.
and as one long holy day? Surely not, since Rabbi Asa himself used to cite Avad
Havdalah.
between one day and the other. Rabbi Asa said that in doubt as to whether the double day should be regarded as a one long day or 2 separate days. So he went to the stricter side on both accounts.
Okay, so if it's one long day and there's no separation, it may come up with one rule. But if you have 2 separate days, and we know actually one of these days isn't really necessary. We've got this similar situation where we celebrate in the diaspora 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do that in Israel because they really know what day it is, right? So they're going to have one singular day. Okay. Rabbi Zera.
Rabbi Zera said, Rabbi Asai ruling appeared reasonable, since nowadays we know at the time of the moon, yet we still observe double festival days. But Abaya said, Rabbi ruling appears reasonable, since the Mishnah states originally they used to light beacons, but when the Samaritans interfered, they dispatched messengers instead.
Okay, so let's get the footnote there.
Okay,
Okay, Mishnah and Rosh Hashanah, each new month was proclaimed in Jerusalem on the basis of observation of the moon. Originally, a system of hill beacons was used to convey the information as far as Babylonia. But opponents of the rabbis, the reading Samaritans may not be actually correct, allegedly lit misleading signals. Messengers might not arrive in time for the festivals on the 15th of the month. So that was so then they actually had to figure out what days they were going to use. So how were they going to do it?
If the Samaritans ceased interfering, we would obtain the information quickly by beacon signals and so observe only one day. Even now, in those places that the messengers reach in time for the festival, we observe only one day.
So I'm going to assume these were not the good Samaritans.
These were like the not good Samaritans, yes. Creating havoc. Because, like rents were due. I mean, there was all sorts of, taxes. When you have certain days that you know how long your month is, when things are calculated by the month, it becomes very problematic that somebody comes in and changes the system. So,
now that we know when the new month is fixed, why do we need to keep 2 days? It's because they sent a directive from there, take heed to uphold your ancestral custom. One day you may be
persecuted
and err will ensure.
Okay, so now the footnote on 4. Now that we in Babylon can calculate the appearance of the new moon, some scholars have suggested that the reference is not to calculation, but to annual notice of the dates of festivals received by the diaspora communities from the High Court of the land of Israel. So that piece comes from Yerushalmi. This system might be easily disrupted should persecution occur. So they were worried that you might not get the right day, so if we do 2 of them, then we'll be sure to at least do the holiday in correct time. Okay, the New Year festival falls on the 1st of the month, but the date could not be determined until witnesses testified as to the appearance of the new moon on the day itself, by which time it might be too late to tell anybody. Consequently, the New Year festival was observed for 2 days, even in the land of Israel. So Here we've got Rosh Hashanah being an important one, observed 2 days, just in case there might be some problem with persecution. So moving on to bottom 229 there, it was taught, Rabbi and Shmuel both said, an egg laid on the first day of the new year is forbidden. On the second, the Mishnah teaches. Originally, they would accept testimony about the appearance of the new moon all day. On one occasion, however, witnesses arrived late, and the Levites were confused in their choice of hymns to sing in the temple. So the sages decreed that the witnesses should not be received after the afternoon sacrifice. If witnesses arrived later than the afternoon sacrifice, both that day and the next day were treated as holy. So we learned that from Mishnah called Rosh Hashanah, which is down further.
But if the witnesses only had one job, go observe the sun, and the next morning come and go tell them.
But they might not have arrived on time. They may have been elsewhere, and for whatever reason, the axle to the wagon broke, the horse, whatever. We know about donkeys in low-lying areas with fog, right? Okay, so.
Or they passed the tavern.
Or they passed a tower. Okay, so at any rate, so if it didn't occur on time in a timely fashion, the Levites wouldn't know what to think. They wouldn't know whether the first day was holy or the second day was holy. So Rosh Hashanah is now going to be just in 2 days, even in the land of Israel. Okay, but we still have certain things in the diaspora that we're going to do 8 days instead of 7. So, all right. Rabbi said, since the time of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai's ordinance, the egg has been permitted. For the Mishnah goes on to say, after the temple was destroyed, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai ordained that testimony about the appearance of the new moon might be accepted throughout New Year's Day. Abaye said to him, but didn't Rav and Shmuel both say, an egg laid on the first day of New Year is forbidden on the second? Rabba, and remember these are 2 zugot, like Hillel and Shammai, Abaye and Rabba. So Abaye is saying, wait, I learned that you can't have an egg that's laid on the first day, even on the second day of the Chag. Rabba retorted, he said, I spoke to you about Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, and you cite 2 lesser authorities, Rav and Shmuel. Okay. So we have Rav and Shmuel as the Moraim were lesser authority than Yochanan ben Zakkai. Abaye then said, then Rav and Shmuel have a problem with the Mishnah? Rabbi, no problem. This is for us, that is for them. So, we've got the footnote. Rav and Shmuel's ruling applied to Babylonia, and Yochanan ben Zakkai's to the land of Israel. So they've got some kind of confusion. Can you eat an egg on the second day of a Chag? Yes or no? So Abaye and Rava, who are zugot, are going about the question.
It's an easy question to solve. Happening.
There you go. There's the Solomon. Thank you, King Solomon. There, eat half the egg, or eat it, on the third day. Don't even know the second. I don't know. I mean, how do you get around this? So now we're going to argue about who's the better authority. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would certainly be arguably the better authority, not Rabbi Shmuel. So anyway, all right. So now we're on to the next piece there.
Rabbi Shmuel, they were later in the.
They were later.
First
Yeah. So whoever's earlier is a more heavyweight than whoever's later.
And let's see.
And then they're trying to say, well, wait, here's the deal. Rav and Shmuel, they applied to Babylon, but Yochanan ben Zakkai applied to the community of Israel. So that's how they're going to differentiate it. Is it, what can you do in Israel? What can you do in Babylon?
He's not this Rabban Yohan ben Zakkai. He's not the Japanese chef on the cooking channel.
Anything's possible.
He's the famous rabbi started Yavna.
The Yavna.
Good.
Want to tell a story?
Oh, the school of Yavna. So during the destruction of the temple, he was such an important sage that everyone has been slaughtered, and his students did not want him to die. So he said, pretend to die, and they smuggled him out of the city in a casket. And they happened to be lucky with the guards who knew what was going on.
What was the excuse, though, to the guards?
I forgot what was it.
Did he die of some horrible plague? So don't open the casket.
Oh yeah. So they got him through the gates, and they wandered down toward what's now Tel Aviv, but then they went further south, and now they're sort of equidistant, and they formed a little community there there was the school of Yavna, and essentially it was his idea, Yochanan ben Zakkai's idea, that we'd sit here around this table. So that was his idea originally. The way to learn Talmud is with a small group of, no more than 10 students around the table of your teacher. And then once we learn them, we should go out and have our own tables and teach.
You know that plague.
Once you learn them, that's a lifetime.
There's that.
That plague thing is still
Yeah, don't open the casket,
there.
right? Yeah.
Well, it works today in Reno. Back in the 20s, there was this terrible disease that ran through Reno. A lot of people passed away from it. And they're buried on the land just a little bit to the south of Hebrew Cemetery. And behind where the Civil War Cemetery is. And the person who owns that property wants, there's another cemetery down past the parking lot. They want to empty that cemetery and move them to this cemetery and bury them all. And there's a problem because they won't allow that one area of the cemetery, the health department, to be open because of that disease.
And they feel that that disease could still be
Well,
active?
it's like the mummy issues, right? I mean, open up stuff after 3,000 years or 5,000 years, yeah. Okay, so a digression follows on the biblical foundation for Rav Yosef's principle, and then Abaya returns to the argument. So back to, what do you do about the egg? We're at the bottom of 230.
Abaya said to him, "Then is the prohibition of the egg a matter instituted by an authoritative court? Surely not. It is merely a consequence of the dispute concerning testimony about the new moon. If testimony is accepted, the egg is permitted." Rav Ada, and Rav Salman, both of Beitza, so that even after Yohanan ben Zakkai's ordinance, the egg remained forbidden. Why, seeing there was no longer any substantive ground to forbid it? Because the temple might be speedily rebuilt, and people would then say, "Last year we ate eggs laid on the first day, on the second festival day, so we will do the same this year." But they won't realize that last year there were 2 separate holinesses, this year only 1.
Okay, so the footnotes on that?
I'm confused. So
10, first.
Jews would then revert to a system in which the Jerusalem court would decide the beginning of the month on the basis of observers' testimony, and distant places would rely on information relayed by messengers. So that's the first part, right? Number 11, if the doubling of the day is due to doubt, one day is really the festival and the other not. There are 2 separate, distinct days, 2 holinesses. But if the doubling is due to the late arrival of witnesses, what happens is that the first day is extended into 1 day of double length for one holiness, and it no longer makes sense to speak of an egg laid on one day and eaten on the next. Oh, so then what they're saying is it would just
one long day.
So
Right.
depending if
But
somebody,
right, and we have the one sage who did Havdalah after the first day. So for him, it was 2 days. It wasn't one long holiness, but that was one argument, one way to look at it. So let's just finish up. Ellen, if you would pick up there.
that's hard to
This
do.
little. Then how could we
Then how
accept
could we
testimony?
accept testimony? The same argument might be used. The temple might well be speedily rebuilt. People would say, last year we accepted testimony throughout the day, so we will accept it also this year. No, acceptance of testimony is a matter for the courts, and they would not make a mistake. Eggs are everyone's business, and mistakes would be made. Rava said, even after Yochanan ben Zakkai's ordinance, the egg remained forbidden. Did not Yochanan ben Zakkai himself agree that if witnesses arrived only after the time of the afternoon sacrifice, that both that day and the next day would be holy? Rava said, moreover, the halakha is according to Rav in these 2 matters, whether lenient or strict.
All right, so next week we're going to pick up on how do you actually get to cook on a chag. You have to make a certain kind of eruv. So, eruv tafshil.
Now next Monday is a holiday, sort of.
Yes, there is
Secular
that.
holiday.
Yeah, I think that we will not be on.
Okay.
Do you think this
I
is
think
yours?
that's yours, I think that's yours.